It's always exciting when a box such as this arrives on your doorstep, especially when you know it contains retro goodies. This week's project is in here, another Amiga 600 to repair, but there's also a little present, I believe. I know what it is, I just don't know what's on it. So I wanted to open it on camera to catch that authentic surprise reaction. It's in here. I know it's a t-shirt, but I told him to surprise me. Wow. How awesome is that? It fits perfectly. Thank you very much, Mike. Speedball 2 t-shirt. One of my favorite games for the Commodore Amiga. So I guess we better try and fix this one. So it's got a couple of problems. Let's just power it up here quickly and we'll run Amiga Test Kit to show you what's going on. First issue is with the CIAs, or more accurately with CIAB, the even CIA. You can see there that we have one failure, actually exactly the same failure that we had last time when working on the Rev 3 A500. So may need to swap that chip. The other problem though, it is with audio, and that just does not sound right, does it? All the channels are there, but they are incredibly faint. So that is most likely going to be capacitors. This thing needs a recap. We're going to do it slightly differently today though, because I'm going to use polymer caps rather than just electrolytics. Mike was kind enough to send me this awesome t-shirt, so I think that's the least I can do in return. It's another 1.5. I think the last one of these we looked at was a 1.5 as well. This will actually be the third A600 that we have looked at this year. And I have another one of my own. Granted, it's just a board, but there's another one over there to repair. If I get this one sorted, I might leave that other one for sometime in the future. But yeah, we can see straight away that the capacitors have worked their magic on this area. Plenty of green on there, including around that CIA, which I would assume is CIAB. So if we reflow that, tidy all that up, that might fix the problem. The power and video section over here doesn't look just as, no it does, doesn't it? Look at it. Very green, very crusty. Long overdue its recap. So let me get the board out, we'll get it out of its shield and get stuck in. You know, if there was ever an example of why your Amiga needs recapped, this is it. Because look at the state of that. And if it wasn't for the audio, well, this thing still works. If you had showed me a picture of this beforehand, I would have said there's no way this could possibly work. That's the reset circuit in there. It is looking kind of nasty. Up around that CIA and around U15 there, things are in a terrible state. First thing we're going to do is try and treat the corrosion that is there. We'll be using white vinegar as always, but I'm going to try and take another step as well, because I want to try and use these wipes. Multi-surface cleaning wipes, bleach free. The only thing that's in these is baking soda and white vinegar. We'd use these around the house for, say, cleaning the kitchen counter. But since there is just baking soda and the white vinegar in there, what I want to try and do is lay one of these over the affected area. And I'm going to try and use it to hold the vinegar in place. Yeah, these things are soaked in white vinegar already. Well, you know, they're damp. I wouldn't say they're soaking. But if I take a cup full of white vinegar and just drop that on top of it as well. Now if we just try and work the wipe into position and just let it soak, my thinking is it will hold, it absorbs the vinegar and it will hold it in place on top of the corrosion for us and let it do its job. Before, when we're just pouring the vinegar onto the PCB, it just tends to run off straight away. I hope that this will, you know, help keep it in position. So we've got one there, and I'll put another one over this side of the board. Just trying to use a toothbrush to work it down actually onto the PCB. And we'll drop some more vinegar on that side. I'm just going to leave that there for about an hour. Okay, it's been sitting for about an hour. Sort of every 10 minutes or so, I just went around it with the toothbrush, just around where all the corrosion was, you know, and just give it a brushing through the wipe. And let's see how it got on. This area was definitely the worst. And yeah, okay, there still is signs of corrosion there, but it's definitely not as bad as it was. I think it will be easier for us now to flow some nice clean solder into that. This side, where the corrosion wasn't just as heavy, it has came up even better. So yeah, I'm pretty pleased with how that worked out. Before we do bring the soldering iron out though, I'm going to throw a lot of IPA over this because we need to chase that vinegar away. We'll just give it a going over with the toothbrush again with the IPA. Then I'll just tip the board up and let it all run off. We'll try and get anything that's left in just with cotton buds or with a paper towel. One thing I never checked actually was the bottom side of the board. It looks like there has been a bit of corrosion just here. But obviously the vinegar that I would have put on would have run through the vase and bits and pieces there. And that IPA has run to the bottom side as well and has more or less dealt with whatever might have been there. You know, one of the difficult things about doing retro YouTube is when you forget to record the audio for 42 minutes of removing capacitors and making good existing solder work on an Amiga 600 motherboard. Yeah, recorded plenty of video, but some idiot forgot to record the audio. So instead, we're just going to do the very quick version, and I'll give you a bit of a voiceover as it goes. So the first thing we did was get the new tub of ChipQuick SMD 491 and just go over this entire area. Plenty of flux on the board, and we just reflowed everything in the attempt to chase away any of the remaining corrosion, but also get those capacitors, those existing caps, get them off the board. That CIA, as you remember, was quite crispy looking, so it got a full reflow as well. Now, my method of removing these caps here probably isn't the most advised way to do it. If you just want to use a soldering iron, use 2 soldering irons and lift the cap off. I'm sort of just used to doing it like this, as in I'm heating the solder on both sides several times until it is molten and the cap just falls away. But yeah, if you want to do it right, use 2 sets of irons, or you can use hot air or even soldering tweezers, something like that. Just don't cut the caps off or twist them off. With the extent of damage to this board, cutting and twisting, well, you're going to risk losing pads. And you can see there, despite how much we did clean up the board beforehand, there is quite a bit of gunk appearing when I am reflowing these components or removing those caps. I flipped the board over here just to give us better access to the other side of some of the components, and that's CIA. And then once we're happy that everything has been reflowed, just going over the old capacitor locations with some solder wick just to mop up all the excess. So now we're done with this area, we're going to move on and just do the area there beside Paula. There's one capacitor to remove there. Well, one surface mount cap, there is a through-hole cap as well. But we're just going to reflow this entire area in a similar fashion as well. And we'll just do the one side of Paula that's facing that cap. That's everything done in this area then. So just a matter of tidying up. And for that, just the usual cap full of IPA and cotton buds. Over in this area, plenty of capacitors to remove, but we will first of all pull out those couple of through hole caps just to get better access to things, and I'm going to remove that coil as well. Going to pull the keyboard connector out just to get better access to those two caps at the audio jacks, and this area here needs a reflow. It is rather tarnished, so we'll do all that. Through hole stuff out first though, so as per always, bit of flux, bit of fresh solder. Because of the large ground planes, I need to use the Moo gun along with soldering iron just to get enough heat in there to make sure those points are cleared. I guess I'll have to do the sound effects for the Moo gun as well. Mrrr. Similar story at the keyboard port, just decided to remove all the through hole stuff at this point. So we got it all freed up eventually. It was quite hard actually to free that up. Several of those solder points had corroded, obviously from the caps on the other side. But we did get there in the end, and it came out without any damage. That'll just let me get to those two caps better. The caps up this end of the board really did not want to come out, so I wound up having to walk these out. And in fact, there is one hole that I cannot get cleared. I'll show you that in a minute. Then we removed the coil just to again give better access to a couple of the surface mount caps on the top side. And then it was just a matter of putting plenty of flux on this area, reflowing everything and taking those old caps off as we go. Then just while reflowing these buffers, someone noticed that they hadn't pressed record on the audio, so I thought I'd just turn the camera off. So it's just a matter of repopulating the board again. The only thing that wasn't covered in that last section, just here, that capacitor C304, there were a couple of traces that run underneath it. They were quite heavily pitted, so they got rubbed down just with the fiberglass pen. A bit of solder dragged over the exposed copper, and then a bit of solder mask on top of that. Turned out to be nothing wrong with those traces in the end, but the solder mask that was there, as I say, was quite heavily pitted, so it was worth just rubbing it down to get rid of any corrosion left in that board that might have caused problems in the future. For the replacement caps, as I said, we're going to be using polymer caps. I got this kit from Amiga Kit, and I know some people would have a lot to say about Amiga Kit. I can't fault them with this purchase experience. They were the cheapest in terms of a polymer cap kit. I think this came in at about £18 delivered, and I left them a little message to say could it please be sent out as soon as possible because I wanted it for this repair, and in fairness they sent it next day. So thank you very much Amiga Kit for the quick turnaround. They have included a list here of the different caps. I can see they're all labelled in there. C, D, E, F, G and H. So it's just a matter of getting all of those on here. And I just noticed actually that background image, that is an Amiga 600. Excuse the glare on it, but there's the keyboard connector. There's Agnes, Denise, one of the CIAs. All of that is the same. Just a nice little touch. I wonder if you buy an A1200 cap kit, does it have the PCB of a 1200 in the background? Anyway, Let's get these on. We'll just do all the surface mount stuff first of all, and we'll do the through holes later. And I suppose we may as well do them in order. Let's do C first of all, which is these ones. That is the 100 microfarad caps. Now, one thing I thought interesting, since I haven't worked with these caps before, you can see the labeling on the top of them is slightly different than your traditional electrolytics. If I get one of the old caps, it's labelled there 101, then I'm assuming that's a part number, and 016, could that be the voltage rating of these 16 volt caps? The bit that might throw you off is that first line 101. See, if we look at one of the 10 microfarad caps that we need to fit, it is labelled 100 on the top, but that's definitely a 10 microfarad, not 100. The way these are labelled, what's happening there is that it's a 10 and then a multiplier of 10. So 10 times 1 multiplier of 10 is 100. 10 times 0 multiplier of 10 is just 10. Although I'm saying that, maybe that is just a thing for the Worth electronic caps, because there are two other caps which have a completely different labelling strategy on them. They would be the 47 microfarad caps, and they're just labelled 47. So I suppose the moral of that story is just pay attention to how your capacitors from any given brand are labelled before you go sticking them on the board. So 100s. They are all in this section of the board. C235, 236, 239 and 409. These three you don't necessarily have to fit. They're just taking power, audio and video, composite video, to the RF modulator. But we're leaving the modulator on this one, so we will just refit these capacitors. For fitting them, you can see the outline on the silk screen with a chamfered end at the positive side. There's also a positive symbol there. That lines up with the capacitor itself. The positive side has like a chamfered outline on its base. Negative side is always denoted by the solid line there at the back of the capacitor. Just want to turn this through 90 degrees, just make it a bit easier for me to fit these. And the way that I like to do it anyway is just to load up one of the pads with a bit of solder. Then we'll grab the cap in the tweezers, remelt that solder and slide this thing into place. Granted, a wee bit of flux there would help things. Then just a dab of flux on the back side, and we'll get that down. And that's one done. We'll do the 10 microfarads next, labeled D in the Amiga Kit. It's just one of them at this point on the board, the rest are all over the other side. Right, where does the other 10 microfarad cap go? Because I thought there was only 3. Granted, this kit is probably covering all eventualities, all revisions of Amiga 600, so maybe there is only 3 on this board and not 4. So that is cap C214. That one is 305. That one is 613, I think, if I'm reading that right, which isn't mentioned here at all. Where is 321 and 460? Yeah, I think the other one actually is meant to go there, but I'm pretty sure that wasn't fitted. No, it was fitted. The other one goes there. That is capacitor 460. And yeah, 460. So cap 321 on some boards, that one must be called 321. On this board, it is 613. Maybe just needs a little revision there, Amiga Kit, if you're watching this. Maybe just put on your sheet here 321 or 613. And yes, before you point it out, I know I made a mess here. I was trying to solder that backwards, not really paying attention to what I was doing, and I have managed to bridge the negative side of that cap to that can. So we'll just dump quite a bit of flux in that corner, and let's see if I can tidy that up. Yeah, I think that's fixed it. Granted, we now do have a bit of solder on this can, but there's nothing I can do about that. So what's next? 22 microfarad. 5 of them to fit. There are definitely 5 of them on this board. 1 there, 2 there, and 2 there. The silk screen marking for this cap isn't really there, just because of the other components in close proximity. But we can see just at that point there, there is a very small plus on the PCB, and I have double checked it on PCB Explorer as well. Looking at it as we are here, the left hand side, or the side towards the PCMCIA slot, that is positive. 2 tricky ones next. I'm going to turn it around this way, and we're going to fit them to the left hand side there. First of all, this is where I need to be careful, don't want to melt anything. And yeah, I think I got that okay. Nothing melted on the audio jacks. The last 2 are over here then, C303 and 304. I'm sorry I am constantly moving the board around. It makes it hard to follow what I'm doing, but I think it's more important to make sure I get these on right. That has to take priority over everything else. Before I fit the through-hole caps, I'll just do the last of the 2 surface mount. These ones I think are only on this revision of the board, Rev 1.5. They're certainly not on the revision 2 board, but it is nice that they are included in the kit. It is jumping ahead slightly in terms of said kit. It is labelled as H on these, the last ones, but I just prefer to get all the surface mount stuff done first. These 2 go there. And yes, I just blocked that hole for the coil. Sort that out in a second. A little bit of braid should clear that up again. Perfect. Right, through-hole caps. We have 2 470s and 2 1000s. The 470s go on there and on there. I'll just solder one side of it, then I'm going to grab the cap on the other side, reflow that again, and just push it to make sure that it is home. Yeah, I think that's good. Feels good anyway. Do the other side. Yeah, they're sitting fine. And then it's the 2 1000s. One of which goes there. The other one goes there, but that's where we have a blocked hole, and no matter what I do, I cannot get that unblocked. And then for this other one, it's a negative side, no surprises. It's a negative side that I can't get the leg through, because there's a massive ground plane on the top side, massive ground plane on the bottom side, and you've got that massive can for the RF modulator attached to the ground plane as well here. So it's just soaking away too much heat. I cannot get it cleared, or my soldering iron isn't good enough to get it cleared. So what I want to try and do, I've got the cap wedged there just against the hole. We'll put a lot of solder on the iron and try and heat the hole on this side and get that leg through. There it goes. And that's it right through. If I had kept working on it for long enough and used enough heat, I probably would have got it cleared, but I was worried I was going to wind up damaging the board. I had already scratched it slightly. So you can just push them through when you are absolutely stuck like that. Right, everything's hooked up, ready to test. Got the serial and parallel loopback dongles in there as well. System still comes up, so that's always good, and it's booting. Right, Amiga test kit. We are going to run the full suite of tests, but let's just start with our known problems. So CIA, and no, it still has that failure. So that chip might very well be bad. What about audio then? And yeah, that is still bad. Right, let's try and isolate this. So, left, channel 0 left, it is playing, and it seems to be playing to a correct level. Channel 3 left, why is that now playing audio on the right channel? That doesn't seem right. And if I isolate channel 0 left, it is now only playing channel 3 left out of the left channel. Turn that back on. And yeah, the audio is messed up and it's coming out of both channels. Something definitely not right there. The actual right channels themselves, they are incredibly low. They are both there, and what I can hear them, they do sound to be correct, but they're far too quiet. Low pass filter seems to work. Does that make any difference to the sound or the music? No, it's just exactly the same. So what could possibly be causing that? Is that likely to be a fault in Paula? We did only reflow the one side of Paula, so I suppose we may as well reflow all of it. Although, if we take a quick look at the schematics, I'm wondering, is it maybe more likely to be a problem with U15, the OPAMP? Because the audio levels themselves are not right, between the left and right channel, that is. Although in saying that, it is only left and right fed into this thing, is it? It's just the left and right channel coming from Paula. I suppose there was quite a bit of corrosion in this area, so maybe it is the OPAMP. I would certainly prefer it to be that rather than Paula. I suppose we could pull that off quickly just to check everything underneath it. Just before we do that though, let's just test everything else in Amiga Test Kit. So memory. Yeah, it's been around a couple of times. That's fine. Haven't got the keyboard connected. Floppy drive, let's just see. I want to see if that timer fault in that CIA has any impact on the operation of the floppy drive. Doesn't seem to so far. Now there is one error there. I do know that disk does have a couple of bad sectors on it. So we'll let that slide for now. And yeah, otherwise it seems to work fine. Controller ports. Well, our mouse port is obviously working okay. I'll just use the mouse to test the joystick port. And yeah, that's fine. Audio, we know, worked. Video, that all looks fine. Although I suppose we should check composite output. Just give me a second to hook that up. And yeah, it works. Looks terrible, but it works. So let's just do the serial and parallel test. Serial first. Yeah, that's all good. And parallel. That's all good. So yeah, still a couple of problems here. I suppose first thing to do would be a reflow around Paula. Just because that's easy. And yeah, do that and we'll try it. I'm just going to reflow around the CIA again, just in case I miss something. I suppose may as well just reflow that whole area actually, just in case it is a bad connection at said OPAMP. Okay, Paula, CIA and the OPAMP reflowed. Did a bit of reflow on the bottom side as well, just in this area. There was a little bit of crustiness down there I had missed. So yeah, let's see what it does now. Amiga Test Kit, let's just go straight for the CIA test. No, still bad. I think we're just going to have to pull that chip, assuming that is CIA-B, of course. That's the other one there, U7. That one's U8. You would assume that's B. And what about audio? Yeah, that's just exactly the same, isn't it? So I think we will pull the OPAMP as well. Alright, let's try and get these off. They have just been reflowed. so no need to drop any more solder on them. I will just stick a little bit of flux around them though. Hot air as always. I've tried to protect this area as best I can with Captain tape, so hopefully it's okay. Just need to be careful now that we're not going to damage the new caps that we've just fitted. I think I put way too much flux on this, forgetting of course that I had flux on it beforehand as well. So it's producing an awful lot of smoke. Things do look pretty good under the CIA there. It is a little bit crusty under where that OPAMP was, so let this cool for a second and then we'll tidy it all up with a bit of braid and do a bit of inspection and see if we can find any damage. I don't think we will though. I think it's more likely to be a failure in this chip and that one. Ah, that's hot. Okay, I've been right round the CIA position and that OPAMP position, traced everything out with the multimeter and it's all okay. No broken traces, so hopefully that is pointing to a failure in those two ICs which we removed. I've got replacement parts here. Did have to pull them off my 600. I promise that's the last time I am pulling parts off this board. So that's the old parts, and put them to the side so I don't get them mixed up. And these are the new bits. Let's get these on and hopefully that fixes the problems. Okay, there they are, fitted. Let's try it. CIA test first. And yep, that now passes, so must have been a bad chip. What about the audio side of things? Yeah, okay, it is playing the music, but the right channel is incredibly loud. Let me just turn that off. So with just the left channel playing, it is now correctly just playing out of the left channel. It's just playing out of the left speakers. But if I turn off both of those, and turn on the right side of it, it's way too loud. So something else must be bad on here, and in fact I wonder, with that right channel being so loud, I wonder is that what possibly damaged the last OPAMP. So it was at this point that I went on a mission trying to find what was wrong. And quite the mission that was, because I must have spent 2 to 3 hours going over this, trying to find the faulty component. Turns out there aren't any faulty components. But in the hunt, I had the scope out, trying to measure the levels. We were getting about 20 volts peak to peak on that right channel. That's why it was so incredibly loud. The left channel was just 3 to 4 volts, which is what I would have expected. So had the OPAMP off again, had all the passives off again, just to isolate the raw audio coming out of Paula. Measured that all seemed to be okay. Put all the passives back on, we could hear that raw audio coming from Paula via the audio jacks. Granted, it sounded terrible and was probably a bit of a bad idea, stressing the chip, having to drive that, but we just did it for a second, and again, everything was at the correct level. Or should I say the left and right channels were both at a similar level. Put the OPAMP back on and yep, it was bad again. So I started thinking that perhaps that is another bad OPAMP. Couldn't see how though, because you know it came off that other board I have and it worked fine on there. Had to go have a chat with some of the guys on Gadget UK's Discord. That's where most of the Amiga folk that I know hang out. And Pillock over there, he suggested that it might be an impedance problem. Now, remember when I said I had tested everything around the OPAMP? Well, yeah, I thought I had. I had tested all the pads and their traces to the first point that they went to on the PCB. Didn't test them any further than that. If I had have done that, I would have found a broken trace just here. That's why I have that JFET removed. That is Q331. And if we take a look at the schematic, that is the toggle for the low pass filter on the right channel. And despite how it actually looks there on the schematic, the actual wiring on the board, well, it's electrically the same, but it's also slightly different. On the top side of the board here, the only trace coming from pin 8 on U15 on the OPAMP, that goes to the drain on Q331, then from there to that via, and then from there it connects to those 10k resistors on the bottom side of the board. Equally, capacitor C331 and resistor R331, they are on the bottom side of the board as well. And the break in the PCB is just after the drain pin on Q331, just at that point there. With the multimeter in continuity, you can see we have connection there down to that pin, but we have no connection down to that via. The break is just there. So I'm just going to run a little patch wire from that point down to that via. I will first of all though just refit the JFET. This thing is fine. If you remember, we tested the low pass filter earlier and it was still working. So I'm just going to take a bit of bare wire like this, try and make that off to that leg of the JFET, and then we'll take it down and just make it off onto that via. Being careful, of course, that we don't want to bridge it to that resistor because it isn't connected to that resistor. Probably should get the microscope out for this, but let's just give it a go. Alright, I think we've got it. And yep, that is dead short now. Didn't bridge anything to that resistor, did we? No, that's okay. And so did that fix it? Yep. It now sounds perfect. Unbelievable. I must have honestly spent 2 or 3 hours removing components, testing components, when all it was a broken trace. That is definitely lesson learnt there on my part. Trace everything out first, especially where corrosion is involved. But at least it is fixed now, and sure, I got plenty of experience desoldering and resoldering things. I think that's our 600 complete. 16-bit dance party. Well, that's it all back together, ready to go home to Mike. Hopefully it continues to work well for him for the foreseeable future. All it needed in the end was a CIA, the OPAMP, and that little trace repair. But the only reason it needed that was because of the old capacitors. So you've heard it a million times before, but I'm going to say it again. If you have an Amiga that has those surface mount caps in it, 600, 1200, CD32 or the 4000, if you have one of those and it hasn't been recapped, even if it still works, please get it done. Because as you've seen in this machine, this one still worked up to the point where the audio let go and the corrosion was quite extensive. So yeah, get it done if you don't have it done already. And I just want to say another thank you to Mike for the awesome t-shirt. No doubt you will see this again at some point in the future. But that's going to be it for this video, so thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed it, I would appreciate a thumbs up. Why not hit subscribe if you haven't done so already. Still plenty more yet to come here on CRG, and I'll see you next time.